Wondering how you can become better at running your business? Entrepreneurship can be stressful. There's too much to do and not enough time. If you're isolated in your daily decisions, have no fear. Success and balance are possible. Welcome to the Small Business Answer Man podcast, where you master the art of running a successful business using practical advice from experts who want to help you succeed. Now, here's your host, Gary Wilbers.
Welcome. We're glad to have you again this week. Can you believe it's almost the end of the third quarter? We're going into the fourth quarter. I'm sure you've got so many things to do. I'm sure you've got to get ready for the end of the year, your budget, maybe buy some Christmas gifts, maybe get ready for Thanksgiving, family coming over. Oh my gosh, we know business owners are busy. And plus at the end of the year, we get that thing called taxes that we have to start getting ready for. So there's so many things to do. Well, I'm kind of setting you up on purpose here because our guest today, Leslie, is with us. And Leslie, what problem will you help our listeners solve today?
I will help your listeners find more time in their day that they don't know is hiding in 3 different places and unsuspecting places, I should add, and help them get more accomplished faster and easier and with a lot less stress.
Well, see, I set you up because I know you've got a lot to do in this fourth quarter, but Leslie Shreve is the founder of Productive Day and the creator of Taskology. It enhances workload management and productivity for C-level leaders and professionals. With over 20 years of experience, she helps clients regain hours in their workday and reduce the small time significantly. Leslie, it is great to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, Gary. It's great to be here.
Well, let's talk about that. We kind of set it up of, those challenges. And we know as we're going into this fourth quarter, there's a lot that comes up because it's not just business then, a lot of our personal stuff. We want to have that time for family and friends and not feel overwhelmed by the workloads that's there. So I guess let's start, if you don't mind, Leslie, is maybe what do you think are some of the most common time wasters that you see in the workplace? And how can we eliminate some of those?
Sure. So the first most common time waster would be the way that someone is managing things to do. So task management is one of those areas that people are trying to manage and keep up with more than 10 different sources of tasks in their workday. If they're using a planner or any form of paper, they're actually using something that is sort of old and outdated. Sorry, I know I'm going to ruffle some feathers with that because people are very attached to their planners and their Franklin Covey, things like that, or a legal pad. My clients will bring me big pads, little pads, spiral pads, notepads, Post-it notes. They've got whiteboards, Excel spreadsheets, and Word documents too. But when it's paper, it becomes yet another source. Now, when I say source, I mean email is one of them. That's just the most annoying for everyone to keep up with. But we also have phone calls. We have texts now. We have social media. We have meetings, hallway conversations, and we have the papers and files on the desk sometimes as reminders of things to do. So what professionals are trying to do is look in each of those areas at each of those sources and figure out what's the most important thing there. And it might be something sitting on their desk. They consult with their legal pad. They're looking at email. They might have flagged a few things. And now they're trying to plan and prioritize in their head. And this is when things go south. This is when people forget the follow-ups or the tasks, or they're missing opportunities. They're missing out on conversations, connections, all kinds of things. All kinds of things are slipping through the cracks. So the one thing I want to tell people is that you want to get away from paper, because this is the first most inefficient method of managing things to do. Paper is a tool, not a system, and you really do want to have a system in place. So there's a lot of time being lost in the day where people are writing and rewriting to-do lists all the time. They are regrouping between tasks, which is what my clients call it, because you might finish a task and then say, great, I'm done with that. Now what? And they're looking around and they check the email and they check their desk, and then, they look for those legal pads, and all this time is lost. And that can actually be saved so that you can go from one thing to the next seamlessly. There's a lot more time lost in that process, but I'll stop there. That's the high level. And those are the big issues, because planning and prioritizing becomes so cumbersome and time consuming when they're all spread out.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge. And for small business owners, especially, that's who our listeners are, the majority of them here, because, there's never a lack of things to do.
No.
And a lot of the times they are not good delegators. Let's just be honest with it. I know because I was one of them, so I can say that. I'm falling on the sword myself. But I guess the question I come up with that I keep thinking is about how can we as small business owners kind of get a grip and all that we need to do, and how can we prioritize those more easily to really focus on what's the most important activities, because that's what impacts our bottom line. And when we're doing those things, other things like email and trying to find what's the next best thing, we really lose money is what happens in the small business world.
That's true. It's true. And I'll mention this before answering that question. Email management is really task management in disguise.
Mm.
It's also information management in disguise. So think about all the tasks and follow-ups that come from email that really need to be compared with all the other tasks on your plate, right? So the answer to your question is that small business owners really want to centralize their tasks. And what I mean by that is to choose the task list in the email system that you've got, whether it's Microsoft or I don't know, I know Google has one. It's probably not a large one, but it's there. There's Asana and Trello and Todoist and all these other different kinds of software. Pick something and then load it up. What you need to do is go digital if you're using paper right now, because paper is actually holding you back and it's slowing you down. And when you find a digital app that you really like, definitely start with it on your computer, then synchronize it with your phone. But you really want to build a complete inventory of everything that's on your plate. Now, folks might say, well, Leslie, I don't need to do that until December or February, or that's not on my mind right now. The truth is, you really want to get it in that system. You want a comprehensive, complete system so that even though you've got an idea that you might want to toss around in February or a follow-up with a prospect or a client in January, whatever, get it in there, because then it's in the system and off your mind, and you do have a target date of action on there. So you'll see it when it comes up if you're using the system. And that's the key. So what you want to do is build an inventory of everything that's on your plate. It does not matter whether it's a project, a task, a multi-step task, an idea, whatever it is. And my other advice is break it down into teeny tiny action steps. In our system, we have a formula for that. We have a task time connection. We have a whole lot of things baked into the system. So it makes it simple and logical and easy to use. And so what you want to do is take a really simple approach and focus on two things and two things only. What am I going to do? And when am I going to do it? When you build that inventory, it makes it so much easier for you to compare and contrast the many things that are on your plate and then make really smart decisions about how to spend your time.
That is excellent advice. And I love the philosophy of really building that inventory. And as business owners, sometimes we think we've got so much, then that actually holds us back because we don't do the most important things. And that becomes the real key, is because there's things that can drive your business forward. And then there's just those task management, as you talked about, like we get in our email and we're not in there for a couple minutes, we're in there for hours, and we really get nothing accomplished through that process.
And it can be overwhelming. People just kind of freeze up. So when you're looking at that legal pad or that planner, it's going to be a grab bag of big things, little things, projects, tasks. And sometimes, people are going to instinctively kind of hold back from those things that are too big, or I don't know how to start that, or I don't know where to begin. I'm not sure about the next step, or I need Joe for that and he's not here. There's all kinds of things that they haven't thought through. So I encourage everyone, think it through, get down to that very first or next action step and start there, because that's your task. And that means that everything's going to be small and achievable, and then nothing will either make you hesitate or procrastinate.
Yeah. And, everybody says the saying, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. It's the small little things that make the big progress. And that's why I really wanted to get you on now, because I want people, as they go through this fourth quarter, to get themselves set up so they're rolling. And you're not going to get there overnight. It's
No.
going to take time. But if you put yourself in this position over these next 90 days, you're really going to set yourself up for January that you're going to really rock and roll then through next year. And it takes time. I had a gentleman on before on the podcast, and he is Thursday is the new Friday. And what he was talking about was no longer working on Fridays. And in my head, I even told him, I said, well, that sounds great. But I said, I'm going to start that in next year. And he says, well, start now because you won't perfect it till you have time on your side and you get into that process. So I think this is the same type of thing. Let's go to the point of we've built that inventory. We've started putting those in. What's some of those steps now that I can take? And I know you said take smaller steps, it's there, but what's some of the steps when you're working with people to really get them to become more productive? What should they do to really so they can get out of that overwhelmed and that stress at work that we really want to move them from that side of it to being more productive? What's some of
Sure.
those steps that you would share with us that they need to do?
So before, when I mentioned an action date, everything in our system gets an action date, not to trap you or make you feel like you're stuck with that, because our days are constantly changing. So our task list needs to change with us. And so you've got to be able to pivot and turn on a dime, but without missing, losing, or forgetting anything. So the key is definitely, I'm going to repeat, you've got to put an action date, a target on every single task that you identify, everything that you water down to the task level. Because you're right, research shows that it's in those teeny tiny action steps that we get that steady forward movement in the day and makes us feel more accomplished and satisfied at the end of the day. So small steps, give everything an action date. The other thing you want to do is get a really strong task time connection between your task list and now your time. Now, in our system, we never put tasks on a calendar. I'm going to ruffle feathers with that one too, but you got to get all those tasks off of there so you can get a really clear picture of where your time is going, like the serious commitments, because tasks are not committed. They're just thrown on the calendar, like I want to make that call or I want to do that thing. So you want to get those off of there, get them on the task list, because that's where you can actually compare everything. Then you've cleaned up your calendar so that it's only those true commitments of time: appointment, meeting, Zoom call, phone call, whatever it is, doctor's appointment, lunch, networking event. You want to see that and then see where the white space is. On top of that, you want to start protecting time. And we have an extensive system for doing that in Taskology so that everybody knows how many days a week, how many times a day, how long the block should be, and what to do when things go wrong, and on and on. So you want to get in that groove, though, of protecting more of your time, because then what you want to do is have that connection to your task list so that you're not trying to do like a gazillion things in the day, and then have this tiny little thimble of time. Can't have the big bucket of things to do if that little thimble isn't going to hold it all, and it's not. So my clients are always trying to do too much, and I'm sure the small business owners out there, and I am one of them because I am a small business owner, always have more to do than we have time for. So we have to be very selective. So limit the number of tasks you're trying to go for each day. Don't make it so that you back yourself into a corner. If you see that you don't have time to do those tasks, and remember, they got to be small. So that gives you an idea of how many minutes it should take to do it. Start matching that up, and you'll find out, okay, I've really got to pick the most important things because all of this isn't going to make it.
Yeah, I can think about a business owner now because I was this way and I still am this way occasionally. I'll go through the weekend and all the things that come up in my mind that I need to do, I will put somewhere in my phone, have that information. And then, of course, I come in Monday and I make that list. And that list is 25 things long. Well, what happens on Mondays? I meet with my staff. Normally it's when people need you more, all those things that come up. And of course, you get to the end of the day and you feel defeated because, of course, you was lucky if you got one of those things checked off. And that becomes the key. You've got to create that momentum. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because I know business owners will push back on this because I've done some training with them and I talk about, you've got to look at, you can call it whatever you want, but you called it about appointments of time. or time blocking of setting some time so
Mhm,
for you to be able to get things done. And
mhm.
I know the pushback that business owners have on that. So I'm going to ask you, what's your philosophy there? I understand your philosophy, but share with me, why is that so critical to have that time blocked in versus saying, you have all these things going out today and you're just trying to get those tasks done in between these little time blocks that I have available.
A couple of answers to that. First of all, those time blocks are for getting tasks done. And it is also for processing email. You need that time to get those two most important things done every single day. So I get my clients down to 0 in the inbox, and not just to see the pretty white space, but it's so they know they've seen everything, they've made a decision on everything, and they've moved it all out and into a better location for either reference or action, or it's gone, archived or deleted. So when you know how to get back to 0 every day, you've got this clarity and this confidence that you've seen everything, right? And control, and you know that those tasks now are on the task list in your, what I call mission control. So those time blocks are for those two things. And if you keep an eye on your email, it's not going to balloon out again and start scrolling off the screen. So your time should mainly be spent on the task list. Now, some people get so many email that it's going to be a little bit of both. Now, the pushback that I get from some people too, and it is usually business owners, because the executives I work with in corporate, not a lot of pushback. They're like, give it to me because I am thirsty for time and everybody's stealing my time in meetings. Now, that could be happening with a small business owner too, who has a team and they're always popping by, got a minute, got a minute, got a minute, and they never get time to themselves. But I will tell you, small business owners, you have to have time for you, and not just for tasks, because yes, you got to get stuff done. And yes, you got to process email, but you also need some flex time in there for when things go wildly wrong and you have to be able to pivot, but have that little cushion in there so that you're not tearing your hair out. And then the third thing I'll say is that it's really simple. I'm going to break it down for you. Are you tired of working nights and weekends? Because this is where it can go off the rails. Now, I, as a small business owner too, I love working on Sundays, but there's a difference. Is it because I wanna or I have to?
Yeah, big
The
difference.
choice is, and same goes for everybody in the corporate world, in a small business situation, entrepreneurs, motivated professionals, all of them. If you are spending too much time, your personal time, and you're doing it because you think you have to, and that if you don't, you will drown, that's a problem. So I want to protect time in your workday so that you actually get these things done, and then learn how to negotiate with your time and not give it all away so fast, and don't let others steal it so quickly.
Yeah, that's some great advice. I appreciate you sharing that, Leslie, because I just know that's a challenge that we have. I'm going to put myself in that category because I still get in that, and you've got to work on it. But those, whatever you want to call it, the appointments of time for yourself becomes crucial, because otherwise you just feel like you go through each day and nothing gets accomplished, and that becomes defeating. It feels like then you're on the Ferris wheel or the little mouse on the wheel that never ends. It doesn't ever stop,
The
and
hamster
that
wheel.
creates burnout, that
Yeah.
creates stress, that
Mhm.
creates for a business owner frustration, and they think, well, why am I doing this? And the
Mhm.
problem is that really creates a problem for their business, because that's creating it for their team too, because they're creating urgency throughout their whole team then, and that creates a real problem. One
Yeah.
thing that I keep thinking of, and as I hear you talk about, and it's two words that I use a lot when I'm doing my business coaching with clients. And there's two words, and it works in all types of areas, not only in this area of time management and taskology and really looking at that, but it works in financial and everything else. And it's consistency and discipline.
Mhm.
And I'm just curious to see from your standpoint, how important for us, one thing you talked about is you have a system, and this helps bring them into a system. So that's consistency that's there. And then ultimately, we have to have the discipline to follow through on the system that we put in place. When you share with your clients and you've had some successes out there, how do you think those two things play into it to make it successful, to be able to make yourself have a productive day?
Well, consistency is key. I will say that routines will save you. Habits need to be built. And I will say that no system will work if you don't use it. So you got to use it. And here's one of the challenges that people face is that they've turned looking for tips and tools and tactics and shortcuts, apps and hacks, they turned it into a hobby because everything they try is typically only going to solve maybe one part of their workday, maybe just email, maybe just tasks, maybe it's a timer. It doesn't matter what it is, but if it's not comprehensive, you're going to find that it's just a Band-Aid and it's not really the total solution. So when you have a system, you actually have to use it. Now, mine isn't software. It's a methodology for your technology. So it doesn't matter what you have. It can apply to anything. So that methodology is the same. You know, it's an A to Z step-by-step system that starts in one place, ends in another, and goes the same way every single time. And it includes everything in the workday, everything. And that way, because everything is all connected and because it all works together. And that's what happens when you have disparate systems. You've got email in this software and you've got tasks over here, and you know, it's kind of a hodgepodge. And that's where you're going to have things break down and where time is going to be lost. And that's when frustration goes up, overwhelm can hit, and then all of a sudden you're on your way to burnout, and then you're not doing your best work. So one more word, and that's about discipline. Discipline, and I don't remember who said this because I'm stealing a quote, but discipline is remembering what you want.
Like that. Very much so. Well, I appreciate you sharing your information and Leslie and really getting us to think as business owners. And I have a feeling some of our business owners right now are thinking, okay, that sounds great, but where do I go? What do I do? Of course, it's productiveday.com. We'll have that in show notes. If you had a call to action, I got to look at your website before we went on, some great information there. And like she said, it's a methodology that she shares. How can what's the best way to really check you out and decide, okay, is this for me?
Sure. There are two ways. When you visit productiveday.com, we have two free gifts for our visitors. One is taking the productivity quiz that we have. It's called What's Your Number One Productivity Blind Spot? And this quiz is really fun and it's diagnostic. And at the end, because of all the questions, and there's only 8 questions, but when you finish with those, you'll find out if you're a giver, a marker, a jumper, or a detective. And it's fun. So that you find out, like, what's that blind spot in my day? What's the thing that's tripping me up the most? So you'll get your own unique results report after that. And you'll also get a follow-up deep dive report that will help you understand more fully what's going on and how to fix it. The other free gift we have is a great audio series. It's called the Productive Day Smart Steps. And it's a 52-week series of little 2 to 3 minute audios from me. And they are all tips and strategies straight from Taskology, and you'll get one per week. So I encourage everyone to dive into one or both of those to check it out, get on our list. And we do have a new program coming out this fall called the Productive Day Powerhouse. And you'll get announcements for that when you're on our list.
Super. Some great information, productiveday.com. We're going to have that in show notes because we know our business owners are probably not sitting at their desks just ready to write that information down. She's also on Facebook, Productive Day, Leslie Shreve. We'll have all that in show notes, LinkedIn, YouTube, all that great information. One thing I loved about Leslie before we came on, we talked about educating and sharing, and we shared with you a lot of those challenges that we're all having. But now you've got to do something. You've got to take action. How am I going to move forward? And I would tell you, check out the resources that's available to you. And Leslie has those available to you. Leslie, it's been great to have you on the podcast. But before I let you go, we have to ask you one question. I ask every guest this same question. What would be your best advice you would give to business owners?
I would say to focus on getting a comprehensive system, a methodology in your workday that does handle tasks, time, email, and information, instead of taking your time to look for those tips and tools and tactics and shortcuts, apps, and hacks, because those are Band-Aids that will not solve the whole workday challenge in total. And I would say save that time and not spend time looking for those things, but then save even more time by using the system itself, because it's going to make you more efficient, effective, and productive.
And when you have a system in place, then you'll create consistency and discipline to be able to stay on track with it. Again, it's productiveday.com. Leslie, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here, Gary.
Now, listeners, I want to give you an action item. I always give you an action item when we leave. My action item is we're going in the fourth quarter. It's right at the end of the third quarter. We're going in the fourth quarter. So my action item is this. Let's spend the next 90 days getting our methodology down and getting our system in place, and let's start working on it. Maybe check out Leslie's website at productiveday.com to get some ideas. You decide what it is. We think she's got a system that will work for you, but if not, then find a system that will work for you and get out of the chaos, the overwhelm, and the stressed out. And let's make 2025 be the year we want it to be. And let's get set up these next 90 days to be able to do that. So that's my action item to you. If you have any questions, comments, please let us know. We love getting those comments back. If this somebody you know, because you probably do, that has this same issue, why don't you share this podcast with them and tell them to go ahead and take a listen because you thought of them when you were listening to this podcast. Thanks again for joining us. We'll be back next week with another great guest. We'll talk to you soon. Make it a great day.
That's all the time we have for this week. To continue your journey, head over to smallbusinessanswerman.biz to access the tools and resources mentioned in today's show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with someone who would benefit from listening. That's smallbusinessanswerman.biz. Until next time, remember, when you find the right solutions, your business grows and you get your time back.